1 year on from the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the King and Queen have attended a private service at Crathie Kirk near Balmoral to commemorate her life and 70-year reign. The Prince and Princess of Wales, meanwhile, have attended a private service at St David's Cathedral in Pembrokeshire, and Prince Harry has been seen leaving St George's Chapel in Windsor this morning after getting a little bit emotional at a charity gig last night. I'm joined now by GB News' very own Nigel Farage. Nigel, thank you very, very much. We were actually in the office, just the other side of the glass behind us here, weren't we, when the official announcement of the Queen's death came?
Yeah, I mean, 2 days before, when we saw the photograph of Liz Truss, you know, Boris in and out, Liz Truss in as the new Prime Minister up at Balmoral. And I remember I had Michael Cole on the programme that evening saying to Michael that she doesn't look at all good. It was sort of within a couple of weeks, the Queen's whole demeanour and shape had changed. So when I heard a piece of paper had been run in to the House of Commons at about 12:15 on that day, I knew immediately what it was.
Yeah.
And so it was the long wait throughout the afternoon. The death was finally confirmed at about 6:35.
About then, yeah.
And I was on air at 7. So I was told, well, we want you on for 2 hours, no news, no ad breaks. And I've got to be honest with you, I would regard myself as a pretty stiff upper lip type. Don't believe in showing emotion too much, just don't.
Yeah.
And I found that really difficult because it was an emotional moment. I mean, she'd been there for the whole of our lives. She was somebody that we respected, admired. And for me, it wasn't the death of somebody who was 96 after a mercifully short illness that was sad. It was, one felt the values that perhaps are going with her. And that was what really, I was sad about it, but also slightly depressed about it. Well, as it was, I went on air and did what I had to do. But I think we all felt like that. And it's a funny thing how we sort of live our own lives, the good things and the bad things, through events in the royal family.
Yeah.
You know, weddings remind us of family weddings, deaths remind us of family deaths. It was much the same when Diana died. It reminded people of grief they'd been through in their own lives. I did reflect the next day that the person that had just died was probably the most respected human being in the whole of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, quite extraordinary, the level of respect she commanded right across the planet. And I was fearful because Charlie and I have had a couple of fallouts in the past in the European Parliament. We've not always... I mean, he's always been very good-humoured whenever we've chatted about these issues that we disagree on. And I'll say that. But I was worried that we'd see an increasingly politicised monarchy. And the truth is, Patrick, we haven't.
No.
We really haven't. And I think he's done a pretty good job. I would like to see him go to Australia and other countries like that, but I accept that he's 75 years old himself. But a year on, is the monarchy weaker a year on than it was, as we all thought it might be? No, I don't think it is.
No, and I thought the Republican clamour would be louder than it is, and that's not. I remember vividly standing the other side of that glass with you there. It was a very long wait for the official announcement. And I can remember, actually, I was quite emotional, very emotional. It's the most emotional I think I've ever seen you. And then we went outside for a cigarette, and it was a very strange feeling. And I can remember vividly you saying to me, you're fearful of what's to come. Yes, I was. And I'm very pleased to say those fears have proved to be unfounded. No, look, it was a massive event, and what followed in the next 10 days, with people queuing through the day and night over the bridges, and it was a remarkable outpouring of respect and admiration for somebody who'd worn uniform during World War II. And it's that thing, for me, I think I worry that it was the closing of a chapter of a certain type of British person, you know, people who did know a bit of hardship and a bit of strife and a bit of existential crisis genuinely and have to show grit, determination, stoicism, responsibility, all of those qualities that I worry have gone with the generation. Well, let's be honest, my generation.
Yeah, I mean, look, things have changed. Of course they've changed. But what we're really talking about here, I suppose, is the monarchy as an institution, and can we respect the monarch, and can the monarch stay relatively apolitical? And I think Charles has shown that he can do that. And I just don't think that the alternative of some sort of dreary republic with some clapped-out Tony Blair-like character as president is really very attractive.
It's not, because that's what you get.
That is what you get. Yeah, that is what you get, and I don't think it's going to happen. And, yeah, sure, generations move on, attitudes change. We're not the stoic country that we were. But we just have to accept it for the way it is, Patrick.
We do. Look, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this, Nigel. It's been great to actually have your insight into it and to remind myself. I can actually just picture it exactly as it was that day now, which is remarkable. But there is another story that I'd like to get you on quickly, if that's OK, which is an exclusive that Mark White brought us earlier on, which is about what was going on in Calais. And it was this violent attack on the French police on the beach. These people, 51 of them in total, only 2 of them have been nicked, only for a couple of years, by the way. They then came to Britain on a dinghy. I'm shocking, but this is, I'm sorry, but this is the kind of person who's coming over.
Patrick, I get sick and tired of hearing the BBC News tell me about poor, desperate people. Maybe some of them are. I have confronted these guys in the English Channel. I've seen the aggression on their faces in many cases. And to think that people like that are pouring into our country in potentially large numbers, deeply worrying. Actually, it's a genuine cause for concern over our national security.
Absolutely.
But
we can
nobody in Westminster cares.
Look at this, this is the thing, right? So you've got people there armed with sticks who... Big guys, wielding, couldn't give a toss about the French police, absolutely couldn't care less about them, lobbing rocks and stones at the people as well, really trying to hit the police. They don't care.
It also raises another point, Patrick, and I've said this many times, and sometimes people don't want to hear it, but it's very easy, and yes, we've given the French, or pledged to give them up to £800 million. It's a huge amount of money. It's terribly easy to blame the French for all that's happening. The truth is, the real problem here is not the French, because however hard they try, they've got 70 miles of beach to police, all the way from Dunkirk there in the east to Berck in the west of Le Touquet. I mean, you'd need 10,000 people full-time to genuinely police those beaches, plus hundreds of square miles of sand dunes on parts of that coast. Why we've got the shingle and they've got all the sand is another question. But the real problem is people aren't crossing the Channel because of the failure of the French police, who you can see from that video actually have a very difficult and quite dangerous job to do. They're crossing the Channel because we're allowing them to.
Well, we are.
They're crossing the Channel, they're chucking their documents into the sea, and we, frankly, give far too many of them, when they finally get processed, are allowed to qualify as refugees when historically they never would have done. No. And even those that don't get deported anywhere. 15, 20 years ago, we were deporting illegal immigrants in the tens of thousands.
Well, we've got these two. One's from Sudan, one's from Iraq. OK, so they're in prison now for just over 2 years. They'll probably be out in about a year. Do we deport them? I mean, this will be the question, won't it? I mean, do we deport someone to Sudan or to Iraq? If I'm being honest, I would put money on the fact that we won't deport them.
You may be right. I mean, it took us 10 years to deport Abu Qatada, who was a suspected terrorist. So, I think it's unlikely. Yeah. But this is the point. If you're caught coming into Britain illegally and you don't get deported, then people will simply keep coming. And that's the only way you break the criminal traffickers model.
Nigel, thank you
Thank you
very much.